Okay everyone, welcome back to Japanese History for Gaijins. Let's enjoy history! I've been watching too much Japanese TV. First, I have a small apology about last week's episode because history is confusing. I kind of implied that the Fujiwara was still kinda super in charge at the end of the 11th century, around the time of the later 3 Years' War. That isn't exactly true. Well, kind of, because of the topic of this week, which is a very unique and very weirdly Japanese event. The reign of retired emperors. Okay, so quick update. Let's pop in that time machine. Oh, it's 1066. Somewhere very far away, William the Bastard is becoming William the Conqueror. Yes, that was his nickname beforehand. Maybe the Norman conquest of England was just because he was embarrassed. At this time, the Fujiwara family are still the top dog, acting as the advisor for the emperors, and generally just being in charge. This was helped a lot by marrying all their daughters to the imperial family, so no matter what happened, most of the emperors were either grandsons, nephews, cousins, or another confusing relation of the Fujiwara leader. And that was really how they helped assert their power and their right to rule throughout the period. However, in 1068 CE, by then William is firmly the conqueror and King Harold has a distinct lack of eyes. You know, because arrows and decomposition. Anyway, now Japan has a new emperor. The Emperor Go-Reizei has died. Fun fact, the term Go here is used to mean later. The Japanese equivalent of PM, as in AM, PM, is Gogo. This is literally Reizei the Later, or Reizei the Second. Well, despite having 3 wives, all of Fujiwara blood, he died at the age of 44 with no children. Maybe marrying your cousins and half-siblings, and the continual intermarrying of only 2 families, was not a good thing. This geneticist's nightmare is succeeded by his half-brother, Go Sanjo, who was not directly descended from the Fujiwara. Well, his grandma was one, but that was it. Also, the Fujiwara family weren't exactly nice to him in the 35 years he'd been on this earth. This is because they had a chosen successor in his elder brother who'd ruled for the last 23 years, so the regent didn't think to be nice to the kid he's not even that much related to. The regent also continually tried to have him framed and exiled, or just straight put to death. Once the regent accused him of trying to cause his brother the emperor's death by using magic spells. So when Sanjo came to power, he was not having any of it. He is maybe a wizard emperor ready to actually rule. Something that emperors have been a bit rusty at for the last 200 years. He of course started outmaneuvering the Fujiwara at court, who had become kinda complacent, using advisors and promoting some of the newer, more powerful families, like the Minamoto. One important thing that Sanjo did was start a land records office. Woo, exciting! He's a chartered surveyor now. Woo. No, this has a surprising correlation to William the Conqueror over in England at this point, who's about to order the Doomsday Book so he can record all his domain. Instead of trying to record everything in Japan, this office was meant to sort out the mess of jurisdictions and power in the Japanese countryside and sort out once and for all who's in charge, aka address the thing that the Fujiwara had let get out of control for the last 200 years. Sanjo was so good that in 1069, just a year after Sanjo had gained the throne, the regent decided to retire and give the role to his younger brother, who, on receiving the role, exclaimed that it was a useless ornament. Burn. I don't know what I can say to that. By the way, if your control on power can be undone in 1 year, it probably wasn't too secure. However, Sanjo was maybe a wizard, so who knows? Maybe he was magic. Sanjo also had a sneaky idea. Because people were getting a bit scared of an emperor who actually ruled, because that's just not how this is done, especially not for the last 200 years. Also, a lot of the state infrastructure was built specifically, so it had to go straight through the Fujiwara offices, and this is something that Sanjo couldn't just get rid of. So, he had a cunning plan on how he was going to cut through Japanese bureaucracy, something that we plead for even to this day. He's going to make a new thing that will just bypass the old thing and nick all its power and stuff. So what Sanjo did was retire. What a masterstroke! Then he went and drank some pina coladas on a beach in Kyushu and just generally had a nice time. No, he became a Buddhist monk and put his 20-year-old son on the throne, a dude who would be known as the Emperor Shirakawa. Well, the former Emperor Sanjo created a form of government known in Japanese as Insei, which we translate as cloistered government. Basically, instead of the emperor now being in charge, the old abdicated emperor was, using the excuse of becoming a monk. This is confusing, but essentially the old or cloistered emperor would set up a form of government so that most of the power was concentrated in their hands, while the actual emperor was allowed to be a useful figurehead like usual. This would be a small child or a son or younger brother of the older retired emperor. This allowed the rulers to bypass the old Fujiwara form of governing and cut their power even further. This peculiar Japanese system would continue for the next 70 years and get as complicated as it sounds. Emperor Go-Sanjo abdicated in 1072 and died in 1073, so he didn't actually get to Shadow Emperor for that long. But in only 5 years ruling, he had essentially broken the Fujiwara hold on power, and though they were still around and scheming, the direct control of the country was now in the hands of the emperors, or at least the emperor's dad. What we've moved from is that rather than being ruled by the emperor's granddad or uncle, Japan is now ruled by the emperor's dad, or elder brother. What a change! There were more interesting problems. At one point, 2 emperors had retired. So there was not only an emperor, but 2 retired emperors. Don't worry, this even made people at the time confused, so just go with it. Most of these retired emperors got religious as a monk, whilst still just ruling. Oh, the Japanese, they really don't know how to retire. Some kind of occasional Fujiwara would still be employed by the emperors, but only if they were deemed the okay sort. Instead, the Minamoto and other families were raised above them, until the Fujiwara, while still in court, were limited to mostly smaller titles, and were just lacking any major power. Now this system was not perfect, and went bad pretty quickly. But how? And why? Because families, they fall out. Basically comes down to fathers and sons getting annoyed at each other. Because, unsurprisingly, the guy that's called the Emperor does not like his dad being in charge and not him. So over the following 70 years, the court developed into even more infighting and confusion that can mostly be summed up as, "Dad, stop telling me what to do. I want to rule the country. No, I don't want to wait. I want to do it now. You're supposed to be a monk. Go away." The retired emperors are now able to govern a lot by themselves and without the oversight of a lot of the lords, and this tended to lead to more excess, and they obsessed themselves with cultural and court pursuits, rather than those of the country itself. If Go-Sanjo had been around, he'd probably just box their ears and tell them to stop being so silly. So, we're gonna jump from Sanjo's son, Shirakawa, to another cloistered emperor, Shirakawa II. He was emperor for 3 years, from 1155 to 58 CE. He was then retired emperor for another 34 years. He was cloistering for 5 other emperors. Is cloistering a verb? Well, not with that use it's not. However, it's what put Shirakawa II on the throne that really sealed the fate of the Fujiwara and led to the shenanigans that were to start the samurai wars of the 12th century. Oh, did I just say samurai? Yeah, 'cause we're almost there, guys. Late 12th century samurai wars. They're a-coming in probably 2 weeks. Well, what happened was the birth of a certain Fujiwara Yorinaga, who was born in 1120. He was raised as the favourite son of the regent, and the regent title still exists for some reason. Well, if there was any Fujiwara who was an anime protagonist, this is it. We actually still have some accounts from his own personal journals at the time. It was very fashionable to keep diaries in Heian era Japan for some reason, and he said how his childhood was spent ignoring his elders, and he went hunting and riding and hawking, and his body still bears the scars to this day. Well, it doesn't because he's dead. Well, he later became a great scholar of Chinese works and generally everything, and he was considered one of the greatest scholars in all of Japan, if a little strong-headed. But if one man could restore his family to power, it would be him. When Yorinaga was 30, in 1150, he was promoted to Minister of the Left, the main power position that wasn't the regent, and also not controlled by the Cloistered Emperor. Yeah, it's confusing. Yorinaga had his daughter marry the then Emperor Konoye, the Emperor being 11 and his daughter being 10. Yes, 11 and 10 years old. Yeah, marriage hasn't got any less creepy just because the Cloistered Emperors are in charge. Yorinaga was by all accounts a very strict man who was determined to restore the honour and the power of the Fujiwara clan and address the laziness he perceived in society. This of course made him a lot of enemies, including those in charge of this lazy society. He even got a wicked nickname. Like literally, he was called Akusafu, or Wicked Minister of the Left. Okay, maybe he's more an anime villain now, but still, awesome nickname. Well, the Emperor Konoye died in 1155 at the age of 17, and there were disagreements over who should be the next emperor, as this happened a lot. Now, the regent, Yorinaga's elder brother, Tadamichi, favoured a son of one of the previous emperors, whereas Yorinaga favoured one of Konoye's daughters. This fell apart, but fine. So we now have Go Shirakawa on the throne, that's cool, allied with Tadamichi. However, they had treated Sutoku, one of Shirakawa's half-brothers, a bit badly, and he thought that he should be emperor. Yorinaga was annoyed, but he's okay with this progression of events, but he asked his brother and Go Shirakawa if he could be the main tutor to the heir, a role he was extremely well suited for, as he was one of the greatest scholars in Japan. However, Go Shirakawa and Tadamichi said no. So Yorinaga was extremely insulted. This was a huge public display of disrespect. So he decided to team up with Go Shirakawa's half-brother Sutoku. Yorinaga collected as many troops as he could, and with Sutoku marched and took the capital. This is known in history as the Hoge insurrection, and it happened in 1156. Despite Yorinaga's success, he actually didn't have many troops, whereas Go Shirakawa had the support of two families. Out of nowhere, yeah, it's the Taira and the Minamoto, and they're back again. The samurai families are here to mess you up. So the Taira and the Minamoto came to Go Shirakawa's call and put down the uprising easily, with Yorinaga slain amongst the burning buildings of the capital. Any chance of their restoration and power died along with him. The family survived, but would never again hold the type of power they had had before. Instead, they were replaced by not Go Shirakawa, though he would be a useful tool now in the true conflict, the fight between the Taira and the Minamoto. It's a samurai showdown. Who is going to come out on top? It's about to be time for the Genpei Wars. However, we still have Heian era court culture to discuss, something that I think will set the mood nicely for a more violent episode in 2 weeks. So I've been John. Arigato gozaimashita for listening. Mata raishu. See you next week. Bye bye.